The Committee on Workforce Development will now come to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairman Henderson.
Here.
Vice Chair Gregory. Here. Representatives Bangert. Here. Brown. Here. Haley.
Here.
Hurlbert. Here. Lewis. Lewis. Person. Railsback. Here. Sharp. Here. Thompson. Here. Walshmore. Present. Young.
With 11 being present, we've established a quorum. Just to let everybody know what we're going to do today, we're going to go ahead and exec first on two bills that we had last week. And then after executing on them, we have two bills that we'll be having a hearing on today. So I move that House Bill 2090, sponsored by Representative Griffith, be voted do pass. Any discussion? Madam Secretary, seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairman Henderson.
Yes.
Vice Chair Gregory.
Yes.
Representatives Bangert. Aye. Brown. Aye. Haley.
Aye.
Hurlbert.
Aye.
Lewis. Person. Railsback. Aye. Sharp. Aye. Thompson. Aye. Walshmore.
Aye.
Young.
With 11 ayes and no noes, House Bill 2090 has been voted do pass. I now move that House Bill 2325, sponsored by Representative Patterson, be voted do pass. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairman Henderson.
Yes.
Vice Chair Gregory.
Yes.
Representatives Bangert. Aye. Brown. Aye. Haley.
Aye.
Hurlbert. Aye. Lewis. Person. Railsback. Aye. Sharp. Aye. Thompson. Aye. Walshmore.
Aye.
Young.
By a vote of 11 ayes and no noes, House Bill 2325 has been voted do pass. That concludes our executive session. We will now hold a hearing on House Bill 2171, sponsored by Representative Francis. Representative, please proceed when you are ready.
Chairman Henderson, Vice Chairman Gregory, and Ranking Minority Member Bangert, and the rest of the committee, thank you very much for hearing House Bill 2171. For the record, I'm Representative Rick Francis, serving District 145 in Southeast Missouri. We have in statute, Section 167.903, language for workforce development in our public schools. This bill would further strengthen and enhance career and post-secondary goals. Currently, DESE, our Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, says schools may develop a student career and academic plan with help from their parents and their guidance counselors, and they are to do so regularly. So they may and regularly. This bill says they shall develop a career and academic plan with the help of their parents and their high school counselors, and that it needs to be revised or updated based upon the student's career and post-secondary plans annually. So if a student thinks they want to become a veterinarian, these goals would be to line out the courses that they ought to be taking their freshman year, their sophomore year, etc. Or if they wanted to be a welder, or they wanted to be a business owner. These are the plans that they would draw out. Of course, at the end of their freshman year, they may change their mind. You know, maybe they want to do something else. So that's why instead of regularly, if they would do it annually, then they could kind of keep up with, you know, the change in the courses that they're needing to take. The other thing this bill says is prior to graduation, a student will complete the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And the hope here is simple. Some families, perhaps many families, may simply believe or guess that they cannot afford a technical school, a junior college, a four-year university, simply because they just don't think they can afford it. Maybe they're right. Maybe they would be very surprised. In a day when employers in our state are screaming for skilled workers, let's provide a law where workforce development, higher education, and our public schools are working together to provide real information to our students and to our families about aid and the real cost that it would be to further their education. If parents don't want to fill out the application, then yes, they can exempt out. So in our state, our parents and our students are leaving $71.3 million on the table. That's how much that had been allocated that we're not taking advantage of in our state. There are some expert witnesses behind me to testify, but I would be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Any questions? Representative Walsh Moore,
To inquire.
proceed.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for bringing this up. I'll say, first of all, I like the idea of this. I really like the thinking behind it. I just have a few questions for kind of the technicalities of how we're going to pull this off. Meeting with every single student annually to discuss their plan. And yeah, a lot of, some kids will just, skip it or they'll sign out of it. But I mean, potentially you're looking at, especially in larger school districts, guidance counselors quadrupling their workload if they have to have this report for every single student. And then I see it comes with a $0 fiscal note, which a lot of schools will probably have to hire additional personnel to make this possible. So I'm just curious about how we will pull this off, and maybe someone else can answer that. But I love the idea. I'm just thinking logistically, having the guidance counselor, which schools are already short-staffed. Guidance counselors are already social workers, and doing above and beyond what a school is technically designed to do to better school students' welfare. I'm just curious how we're going to make this happen.
I appreciate the question. My background enables me, I think, to answer probably as well as anybody in the room. I was a middle school principal for 8 years, and we did this. We did what is now called the ICAP plan. And we were actually doing it in 7th and 8th grade, even prior
Which is when you need to start,
freshmen and so forth. So, I had counselors, one per 7th grade, one per 8th grade. And it did not take that long to pull in students and, review, any other thoughts. And, maybe the kid will say, well, I wanted to be a vet, but now I want to be a welder, and, for them to talk about, maybe the math classes or whatever that they need to consider enrolling in. Most of those meetings, would last 5 minutes, and it wasn't hours of them counseling. Really, that's what counselors are there to do. I know they get a lot of other responsibilities. The principal's going to say, I need for you to, take care of the schedule and X, Y, and Z. And I agree. And of all the things that kind of hit me when I was, looking into this and so forth, was the time on the counselors and so forth. But having lived through that, I don't see the concerns that you're bringing up. But it's a great question.
Okay. But that was also at the 7th and 8th grade level. I mean, when we're talking high schoolers, I mean, would you agree that that's going to be more of a realistic conversation?
A little bit more
a
of
bit more
conversation, you're right.
complicated as yeah, it's going to be more of a conversation than it will be with the 7th and 8th grader. But I do, to your point, I like that you're addressing this in 7th and 8th grade, because in St. Louis we used to have a technical school, a technical high school, and so to go into a lot of the trades, you got to have a lot of core math and science that by the time kids get to high school, they're already behind.
So, let me also share that I was in the Lindbergh School District in St. Louis, and we were doing this freshman through senior and counseling and helping our students and so forth, and we didn't have to hire new counselors.
Okay. Okay. And that's one of the larger school districts, just for the audiences, if you're not familiar with it. That was my question, is how big
Yeah.
was this middle school? And yeah, if it's in the Lindbergh School District, it's busting at the seams. Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Branger, proceed, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To inquire. I love this bill. I think it's awesome. I actually passed a bill a few years ago for a task force to look at having a career readiness course that all 8th graders in our state would take. And one of the requirements in that course would be to come up with their ICAP, which would be perfect flow into what this bill is about. So, and I have 4 children that have all gone through middle school, high school, and graduated college. And yeah, they do change their ideas and plans. What they want to do when they're in 8th grade may not be what they want to do in 10th, 11th, or 12th grade, or even when they go to college, they change. So I love the idea that it's going to be revisited every year and that the FAFSA is part of it as well. So I would like to see a career readiness course that all 8th graders would take to streamline into this. That would be my perfect dream for the kids really to sit down and explore all the opportunities that are out there. There's so many opportunities we have in our schools. It's just linking all of it together. So I think it's wonderful. And is there a similar bill like this in the Senate?
Yes.
Okay, I thought that I had read about it in the newspaper or something, so I really liked it when I read about it in the paper too.
I believe
so.
it's identical as well.
Okay, great. And I do want to piggyback a little bit on the counselor part. The school district my children attended, we had 4 counselors for about 3,000 kids, and my kids had to make an appointment just to have their paper signed off. So maybe a counselor, or maybe we have somebody else too that can, help with that role of reviewing that every year. I do think that's very important that you do review it every year, and it seems like you have some experience with that it doesn't really take that long. So, but I love it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Haley, proceed.
To comment, yes, great. Hey, thanks for bringing this. I like this bill, and I just want to comment and provide some information for what some schools do. I was not aware it wasn't required. Seems like a lot of schools do it. And being in education myself, we would have staff members come in the week before school started each August, and we called them academic advisors. It was staff members that had different shifts to work Monday through Friday, and as every student came in to look at their class schedule, they were provided what classes they were signed up for, and then we reviewed their 4-year plan. And it got to be a tradition that the parents came with the young person, the student. We did it in the evening after hours at times too. And so the student and the parents are sitting down there, and we say, here are the courses that you have signed up for. Do you need to make any changes? This is your course of academic study. Has this changed? What are your plans after graduation? And we would go through a complete list, checklist, as a teacher or as an administrator. And the actual guidance counselors were kind of going around putting out fires, helping in unique situations, and we were trained as academic advisors. So it can be done, and we saw 600 students, in a week, and sat down with all of them. And if you didn't, then you made appointments with the parents after hours or whatever to get it done. But it's an excellent idea, and I very much appreciate you bringing this forward.
And you had a great idea there working with your kids as well.
Representative Young, proceed.
To inquire. I too like this bill. I'm just curious though, in my former role when I worked with a lot of students in the public and charter schools and after school type community programs, there were a lot of children who were latchkey children or who were particularly high school students who were couching. So what would be the option for children like this, particularly when you've got to fill out the FAFSA and/or when the only way to opt out based on this bill is a parent. You can opt out if a parent doesn't consent or if they go into the armed forces, et cetera. What are some of the other options for those children, that population?
You're right, because, I went online Saturday night and filled it out just to, go through the process. It took me between 50 minutes and an hour to fill it out. And so it would be best if there was someone that would be available, and chances are it's going to be somebody at the school, although it wouldn't have to be, and, to do this online. Hopefully the school will provide, some opportunities for all students, to be able to find the time to fill this out. I think it's going to have to be up to each school district or, a counselor or whatever to come up with a way so that every student has the opportunity. We have about 43 to 45% of our Missouri students filling it out now. And the national average is only 45 to 47%. So we definitely could do a better job, not only in this state, but across the country, filling this out.
Okay. I wanted to mention one thing. I had the same experience as Representative Haley, and that was we had an 8th grade night. That's how we used to do it. And a lot of the parents came in, and a lot of parents did not come in. But that left the counselors with fewer people to track down at the end of it when they would come in and fill out that plan on that 8th grade night. We would have teachers set up, just like you said, throughout the commons area, and they could go around and work with them and try to help set that up. And like we would get 65, 70% of our parents, at least one parent would come in with them, and then the rest of them we would, as we said, the counselors had a fewer that they would track down, which would help somewhat with the number that you were talking about on some of these meetings. And we were very successful, I felt like, with it. So that was just part of my experience having worked in education also. Other questions for the witness? For the bill sponsor, excuse me. Seeing none. Thank you, Representative Francis.
Thank you very much.
Any witnesses that come up, I'll remind you to fill out the form, or if you've done one online, that would be fine. If not, put it up there. Any witnesses to testify in support?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Mike Harris on behalf of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, here in support of Representative Francis's bill. It is a state board legislative priority on the ICAP requirement. That is something the state board has been in favor of the last couple of years. That they really feel like it gets that conversation happening at the right time for those students as they enter high school. To kind of piggyback on Representative Walshmore's question about school counselors, the state has invested significantly in some school counseling initiatives already. We have dedicated, I believe, $3 million initially, and hopefully up to $10 million total of our federal relief dollars to provide rural schools with some support for dedicated school counselors that the state is funding to get counselors into those schools that may have less resources, so the school counselors can focus more on their mental health side of things. So we are currently working to do that and expand it across the state. Answer any other questions that the committee may have.
Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much for coming. Any other witnesses to testify in support?
Hi, Rich Abishana here on behalf of the Missouri Association of School Administrators in support of the bill.
Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. Any others in support?
Hello, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm David Pierce with the University of Central Missouri and also representing COFI, which is the organization of our four-year public institutions. I did want to mention that one of our students from UCM did turn in some testimony. He's our SGA president at the university and just talked about the importance of filling out the FAFSA. We just think it's a good thing for our students to take advantage of all the opportunities that they have out there. And I think for a lot of people, it just shows that there's potential. That yes, that maybe I can go to college. So we just think it's a great piece of legislation.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much for coming. Any others?
Gary McCann with the Department of Higher Education and Workforce Development. I'm here to speak in favor of the bill as well. A couple of notes I'll also highlight. The SB 703, that's the Senate companion that's coming up tomorrow in the hearing. And also for the department, the governor did recommend about $75,000 to help with filling out the FAFSA in underserved communities. And so alongside DESE, we want to be able to provide help where we can as well. And then finally, the WIOA youth portion of the bill. Basically, there's a portion of the bill where the Department of Higher Education and Workforce Development, through our Office of Workforce Development, will work with the career centers around the state to help students attending those schools with filling out the WIOA youth funds, which actually opens the door to more pathways of funding opportunities, including entrepreneurships, hands-on training, just to name a few. And so definitely, again, speaking in favor of the bill, happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. Any others in support?
Good afternoon, Kara Corches on behalf of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry and Support. As I shared with this committee before, we support an all of the above approach to workforce development and workforce training. There is not a single golden ticket that's going to address all of our workforce problems. It's going to take a multitude of options, and this bill is a great tool for training students early on for high demand careers. We really appreciate the ICAP portion of this, having students start early on thinking about their career plans, as well as the WIOA application for those in our really outstanding career tech ed programs across the state. We're leaving dollars on the table if we don't have them fill out these applications. So overall, just really strong support and appreciate the representative bringing this important legislation forward. Thank you.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Stacy Priest, I'm representing Aligned. Aligned is an organization that was formed by business leaders who have a vested interest in seeing that all students are prepared for whatever comes after high school. So this bill, of course, is right in line with everything that they believe in. I think so many things have been said already. It took me aback to recognize that there were $70 million left on the table for FAFSA. That's crazy. So you don't want any student to ever forego the opportunity to go to college simply because of uncertainty about filling it out or just not thinking that there were the opportunities there. So very much in support of that. The ICAP as well, good questions, interesting discussion about what the capacity is of high schools to be able to do that. It probably goes without saying, our schools have become very resourceful in the last couple of years. And there are things that, they can work with, software that can help them get a start on doing some legwork on their own and looking and exploring different things. So totally understand that that will put a stretch on the counselors, but completely think it is well worth it. So thank you very much.
Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. My name is Brant Shields, Director of Governmental Relations for the Missouri School Board Association. Just wanted to go on record in favor of this legislation.
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Jack Gamble, I'm here on behalf of the Missouri Association of Career and Technical Education. We support the bill, and we specifically support the ICAP portion of the bill. So,
any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any others in support? I was going to remind the committee too, I think we had some that were submitted online, even from some other groups, and you should have received that. So I think we've had a pretty good group there. Anybody in opposition? Seeing none. Anybody for informational purposes only? Seeing none. That will conclude the hearing on House Bill 2171. We will now hold a hearing on House Bill 2202, sponsored by Representative Fitzwater. Representative Fitzwater, please proceed when you are ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Travis Fitzwater, 49th District, here in Missouri. This is a weird mic. It's not staying. I'm bringing before you House Bill 2202. Thank you for your time. This is an extension of a bill I got done earlier in my career in the House a couple years ago, a computer science bill that gave students an opportunity to substitute computer science for a science or practical arts credit for graduation a couple years ago. This extends that a little more by having a better definition of a computer science course that you find on page 1, has some clarifying language on teacher's license on page 2, just taking out his or her and putting in a teacher as the identifier. On page 3, requiring that public schools, high schools shall offer some form of computer science class, whether it's in person, online, virtual, or distance course option. And going further, in that same section and then from page 3 into page 4, data on who are taking these courses to be reported back to the state so we know the demographics of the students that are participating in these courses. It's really important to have that data so that the next section, that a computer science advisor from DESE can help kind of create some policy that would make sense for our workforce needs going forward. And then finally, there is a piece allowing students to use computer science towards state graduation requirements and be equivalent to a science or practical arts credit for the purpose of satisfying any admission requirements of any public institution of higher education. The point of that is that a student takes, we want to try to match what we did in the high school level with their college admissions. Last year I really wanted math to be substituted, but we negotiated that out because the institutions of higher education, that was a bridge too far, and so we took that piece out. But they were, from what I recall at that point, that may have changed, but they're okay with this language as it is with one science and one practical arts as a substitution for entry requirement into a higher ed. There was left out in this bill a task force that was on the bill from last year that had some changes that we didn't have in the House last year. So I'll ask in the event that the committee wants to vote this bill that we just add that task force language back in executive session if that's what the chair would like to do. And this bill, as almost identically, passed the House 149 to 1 present last year, for reference.
Representative, thank you. Any questions from the committee? Representative Banger, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know I've seen this bill for the last several years, and I have a hard time trying to digest the science part of it. My husband's a computer scientist. My daughter's a high school math teacher. We've had a lot of conversations about this, even last night after we were sulking after the football game.
Well, you and I have. I'm sorry. I don't know what you with your kids. I know that you have with your kids or your family because we've talked about it, I don't know, 5 times probably in our time together.
I just have a hard time with the science portion of it. I mean, plants and animals and the periodic table, I can't see how computer science can substitute for that. Math, I do see that there's a lot of math, lots and lots of math with computer science. So I don't have a problem with the math part, but I do have a problem with the science part. I will support your bill. I have in the past, but I still have a hard time digesting that science component. I just don't think it fits.
I appreciate that very much, and I would love to have math as a part of this, but I also want to see the bill get done.
I understand. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
Anybody to testify in support?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. David Jackson, a registered lobbyist, here to testify and support on behalf of Code.org, which is a national nonprofit that was started with the mission of trying to increase access to computer science as well as participation with women and underrepresented communities who typically haven't been as involved in computer science curriculum in courses. Yeah, I think we can all agree that, when you think about the IT guy at your, company, or the kid who is learning computer science and coding on the side in school wasn't, often referenced in the same sentence as homecoming king or, the cool kid, right? And Code.org has really shifted that momentum and that stigma associated with that, because we have, just in Missouri, we have 11,000 open jobs in computer science. And, that ranges, across all industries. We're not just talking tech jobs, everything from, combines to cotton pickers to, accounting firms, you name it. Everybody, here in their individual job is reliant on some type of computer science. And Code.org came together from a group of large tech companies with Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon that decided to really try to revamp K through 12 education and higher ed to make this a bigger priority, because it is a core issue that every job is seeing these days, and in every industry, and the shortage. And most of the kids that were learning this were doing it on the side. And they strongly feel that students should be exposed to learning how to dissect a computer virus in the same way they are frogs, but also not trying to discount the importance of any one individual subject. And so right now, Code.org is the #1 provider for computer science curriculum in the country, and it's all free. They don't do any state contracts. They don't contract with school districts. This is strictly a nonprofit dedicated to try to get the word out there and help educate kids. And so you may have heard about Code.org, the Hour of Code for anybody with kids. They have over 1 billion kids across the world who have now participated in an Hour of Code every year to try to get at least some baseline knowledge of what it's like, and get that stigma out of being somebody in a dark room with ones and zeros, punching in a black box. And in regards to legislation, and Representative, I know we've had discussions in the past on this, and this is really round 2. Round 1 that passed actually ended up being during a special session a few years ago was probably the most controversial piece in looking at K through 12 and what a student is allowed to count as a math or science credit towards graduation. And that bill also put in place standards, so we know that you're not just offering keyboarding and calling it computer science. And a lot of stakeholders and education groups have come together to put those standards in place with DESE over the last couple of years since that bill's been in place. And this is really round 2 in recognizing at the higher ed level to make sure we don't have kids that are counting it as a computer science credit in high school for graduation, and then struggling to figure out how they're going to get that counted as a credit for admissions. And so I would lastly, urge we look at not just Missouri. If we have 40-plus states that have passed this as a graduation credit in other states, we want to make sure our institutions of higher education are also attracting those kids from other states, and that we're adapting with the times and workforce demands as well. So happy to answer any questions, but we appreciate your time on this and consideration, and hope to get this across the finish line this year.
I have one statement on it. I have a little bit of a background. My wife taught technology for almost 30 years. And what she started teaching at the sophomore, junior level was being taught at the 5th grade level at the end. And what they were teaching at the sophomore, junior level had just gone up so many levels at that point. And so I support the bill. I think it's a good idea. We need to try to get this technology passed through anymore. I think the world they're going to live in, that's probably, I respect science, I respect math, and how much we need them, but it's right there too, in importance to a lot of these kids as we're moving on.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about we've tried really hard not to try to suggest that this is more important than any other subject or getting a war of this or that, but really how this correlates to math and to science and in other skill sets. But the way that the bill, just for the committee's edification, the way the bill was passed a couple of years ago, before you can count it as a credit for graduation in high school, you have to have your baseline core classes in those subject areas first. And so you can't just jump in your freshman year and take this instead of your entry-level bio course or, whatever correlates with your end-of-year exams in that structure. That's how this was designed, to make sure that you're looking at your junior, senior year elective.
And I was never saying it was more important than science or math, but I just think we have to realize the importance of this going forward for these kids. We're not in the 1960s, 70s, or even 80s anymore as we're moving on. But
and those 11,000 jobs have an average salary of about $80,000 a year, so that's a significant workforce demand.
Any other questions for the witness?
I also referenced that Tom Dempsey wasn't able to be here today, but wanted me to go on record and fill out a form for him for Amazon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any others in support?
Kara Corches on behalf of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry in support. I often come to this committee and I think give you some doom and gloom about the lack of availability of workforce. But some of the bright spots I'm happy to report is Missouri's tech and innovation economy. We are indeed a top state for technology jobs. We are I think we're number 8 in the nation for diversity in our tech workforce and number 10 in the nation for women in our tech workforce. And these stats came from our Technology 2030 report that we launched this summer to show that Missouri is really moving up in the rankings. And so our hope is to do everything we can to not just secure these rankings, but even to go continue to rise in those rankings and continue to attract and build tech talent. Similar to what Mr. Jackson just shared, technology is not limited to the technology industry. Every industry is in technology. Just last week, I had a grocery store tell me we're actually a technology company that just happens to sell groceries. So every company needs this talent, and we think that the earlier we can expose and train students in computer science, the more likely we are building a workforce that is prepared to meet the job demands of today and in the future. As a result of some of our tech work, we have created a technology alliance through the Missouri Chamber, which is a coalition of different businesses and organizations, educational institutions that are all committed to growing our tech and innovation economy. And we think that this bill helps us to do exactly that. So for these reasons, we're in strong support and really applaud Representative Fitzwater for bringing this forward this year. Happy to take any questions you may have.
Any questions? Well, thank you very much. Anybody else in support?
Hi, good afternoon. Rich Abushan. I'm here on behalf of Google. You know, when I first started looking at computers when I was a kid, I had a Tandy. Remember those? And we did Hangman. Remember Hangman? That was a big deal. You know, when we were just lucky enough to even go get computer time, you know, in grade school. So much has changed, and frankly, there are more and more technologies being advanced for kids that are in grade school than we could ever imagine. We want to support that and make sure that that's spreading into all fields of our workforce. So very much in support.
Any questions for the witness? Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, excuse me. We have one question.
Yes, Representative.
Gregory, proceed.
So the old actual floppy disks?
Yeah, the old 5 1/4s, they were cool. I probably still have some.
The fun. Speaking back to your computer time, this is just a fun one for sake of the committee. The favorite game for me and my friends in second grade was a game called Number Munchers.
Yes.
Did you ever get to play that one?
Yes, but usually recess was over by then.
Yeah. So, no, the computers have come a long way, and I think just looking at, you know, the fact that there's more knowledge on this right now than what there was on computers, you know, when we were in school was just incredible, and the more we can do to train the workforce, the better.
If you'd asked my mom, just turning on her TV would take a little IT programming.
Representative, I remember when there was a game called Pong, and probably not many in this room would remember that.
Right.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Kara Alexander. I'm a registered lobbyist appearing on behalf of the Kansas City Tech Council. Our goal as a nonprofit membership organization is to strengthen and support the tech industry in Kansas City and Missouri as a whole. And we believe that one of the best ways to do that is by continuing to support computer science education in K through 12 schools. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Anybody else in support? Anybody in opposition? Anybody for informational purposes only? Seeing none, this concludes the hearing on workforce development.